All my life I have had a fascination with weapons, tools, and knives. One of my favorites is the nunchuck, or nunchaku. It's a very simple weapon consisting of two shafts and some sort of cordage or chain connecting the two together. Through this method of connection, it produces a staff of sorts which can also produce more momentum and have higher velocities than a solid, rigid shaft, because they are essentially a solid whip. When used, the wrist is moving at one speed, the shaft is moving outside of that in a larger radius, and so it has a higher speed than your wrist. And then the shaft transfers that energy into the cordage and into the next section, and it swings around and whips. Many weapons and various tools seem a little bit daunting to try to recreate or produce. The nunchuck, however, is extremely simple to make, even if you're doing it the traditional way, or a more traditional way. This is what I would consider a kid's nunchuck or junior nunchuck. It is 3/4 inch in diameter, and it is 10 1/2 inches long. You'll notice on these that the spacing between the two rods is not really that great compared to a lot of modern nunchucks, or especially chained nunchucks, which have a fairly long chain, making them a little more awkward. The shorter the chain, typically the more control you will have, as well as if you grasp it at the end, you have more power, but if you grasp it in the middle of the nunchuck, you have a lot more control and speed. But these are kids' nunchucks. Those were oak. These are poplar. And all of these nunchucks here are made from materials you can get at Home Depot. I got the paracord here on Amazon or at Hobby Lobby. But Lowe's sells paracord now as well. These here are adult-sized nunchucks. They are 12 inches long and 7/8 inch in diameter. Poplar, oak. Again, they are strung together with simple paracord. 550 cord, gutted or not, it'll still work. These are non-gutted, so they are full paracord. And these are 1 inch by 12 inch nunchucks. These are full-size, heavy nunchucks. These are poplar, so they're more for training and for kata. These are for use, heavy bag training, self-defense, if you have to use them, preferably within your own home or on your own land, because in most places they are illegal to carry. And they're just really awesome. I also use them for traditional katas when you're swinging these more from the end of the handle, because even grasping it in the middle, they're heavy enough you don't really have enough control. Last but certainly not least are these, which I made yesterday in this very room, using a drill, a couple different drill bits, a saw, a conical rasp, and some sandpaper. Those are the major tools that I use to make these. And a pocket knife, it's always helpful. But since they're so easy and they differ very little from the nunchucks I've made before, in fact, they're probably better because the holes here are larger, I view these as my improved nunchucks. So I'm going to show you how to make these. Let's get to it. First things first, when making nunchucks, we need our stock. Today I'm going to be using a 1 inch oak dowel, and we need to cut this down to length. What I'm going to use for this is just a piece of paper. This happens to be cardstock. So I'm going to mark at 1 1/8 and 1 7/8. Just want to make sure that these are even with each other out here. We're going to use this to wrap around the end, and then we're also going to use it to mark the holes. I'm going to go ahead and use a Sharpie. There's one down. Now that we have two pieces roughly cut, we can mark out the holes. This will set up our mark. This is where it would behave a lot better if you actually punch those out or cut them out. But I think I've got holes. Repeat this process. Now we can drill the holes out. Something I want to do before I move too far onward is mark out the end. Going to mark evenly in the middle. That gives me one line. Then we'll repeat the process this way. And there's our center line. You can do this with a really simple, cheap drill. It shouldn't really be a problem. In fact, I'm going to try one hole with this drill. You're going to go in the side first. And once this one's drilled out, you can go in straight from the end. So first, I'm going to give myself something to work down to as an indentation. That is another reason to do pilot holes, which I've got through an 1/8 inch bit. So I'm not going to use that too much further because I've proved you can use a $10, $15 drill. Once you get your top hole, you can go in from the top. And again, we'll just do a little bit of chip carving. I like to just rotate it in my hand about 90 degrees every centimeter or so. Now that we've got all the holes we need to in the right places, we're gonna embiggen them. I'll go into the sides a little bit. For the ends, I typically move right on up to a 3/8. So I have here a nice big 3/8 inch drill bit. We're going to go in the end. Yep, there we go. See? At this point, the bodies of the nunchucks can be considered done, and we can move on to stringing the nunchucks. This is a quick piece of gutted paracord. It was already cut to this length. It looks about right, maybe about 16 inches. And then we can start threading it. Now, some form of poking tool is good to have so you can poke it through. I've typically used a needle file in the past. So you pull it through, feed it back through on the bottom hole, feed it through the top, Harbor Freight needle nose pliers, and then we repeat the process over here. We drop it down in, poke it through, feed it through the bottom hole, back into the top, needle nose pliers, come on. Then the knot I like to use is, first I'm going to pull these closer together a little bit. Go over on one side, loop under, and then make sure it's even on either side. So if this one over here is now under, it's going to be under when you pull it back over. Like that, and you can see it's symmetrical this way, not this way. Pull that tight, and then since these are exposed and we can get to them, we pull this back down inside, feed back through, out the end, and then we do the same thing over here just to even it up. And there we have finished functional nunchucks. They are very rough. You really want to sand these if you want to use them for any length of time without having to replace the strings. So now we're going to move on and make this pair of nunchucks right here a little more elegant, a little more refined, and to where it'll last a lot longer with this string set and perform a lot better. We're going to carve out the end here so it has a radius to it. I found at Lowe's another tool. This is called a conical rasp. You can put this in your drill bit or your drill press. The drill. You can use it as a drill bit. And then this can be inserted into the end of your nunchuck and used to grind it out. That's about all you need right there. But if you want to go further, you can. The next step would be to carve out these, and I typically use a Dremel tool for that, but the Dremel tool I was going to demonstrate to you with, which has a slower speed, the battery's dead. What we're going to do instead, we're going to drill a number of holes. Just like that. I is back. That's a craftsman's band-aid right there. I'm gonna kind of chip carve it out a little bit first. Now all we have to do really is sand these so they're not so rough and they're a little bit smoother. You can run some sandpaper in here if you want to, that'll clean it up a little bit, smooth it out. Sand the ends, even put a little bit of a chamfer on the ends here. Now, that's good enough for me, and now I'm going to move on to waxing the ends. Apparently I wasn't recording when I taped these up. I just took some painter's tape, blue painter's tape, and wrapped them around the tops, leaving the top exposed but protecting the sides. What we're going to do then is we have this little condiment cup, and it is getting warm on the bottom now. We've got it on a candle warmer. That's going to warm up and melt the wax. And we've got these wrapped to where we can dip them down in the wax. Then we'll let it sit there for a few seconds, pull it out, and then at an angle twist it around so it doesn't pool up in any particular spot and drip off any excess that it needs to. Set it aside to cool and do the next one. After that, we can remove the tape, finish sanding them if we need to do any more, cover them in a Lakota linseed oil or any other sort of finish we want, string them up, and they're done. Now that it is fully melted, we're just going to drop it down in about a full centimeter or so, maybe a little bit more. I typically let it sit in there so it equalizes with the temperature a little bit. I found it helps to get a slightly thinner coat
coating. It doesn't cake up as much. And do the same thing on this other side. Now we're just going to remove our tape